Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Yankee Cowboy Podcast. I'm joined by the co-host Chris, joining me once again. Today's topic, another fun one. It's the NASCAR awesome, awesome race at Talladega recap, as well as the 2024 season schedule review, opening or reveal, I guess you can say, that's coming out. But in playoff implications, we're going to talk about all those things on this episode. Chris, thank you for joining me. Awesome race this past Sunday at Talladega. I will have to say, as much as I despise cup or plate racing at times, this was a traditional cup, plate track race where it wasn't too many wrecks, not too many cautions. I know it might have seemed boring to some, but that's how plate tracks go sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a decent race. I mean, if you listen to some of the other kind of motorsports related podcasts, they said, oh, the only reason why they were 3 and 4 wide at times was because guys were saving fuel, and be it as they may, they feel about it. It was a good race. I think it was up there, I believe, in the top 10 of the most lead changes, definitely in the 70s in terms of the number of lead changes in the race itself. But obviously huge win for Ryan Blaney and Team Penske. His third win at Talladega in his career. A third of his wins have all come at the Talladega Superspeedway. And honestly, looking back at the last 5 Talladega races, he could have won. Or sorry, the last 5 Talladega races, he could have won all of them. So, huge win for Blaney. Locks him into the round of 8 for the 5th time in his career. And he's also joined by William Byron, who, obviously our last show we did, I believe, was before the playoffs started. So William Byron scoring the victory at having a brain fade here, where they raced before they went to Texas, winning there at Texas Motor Speedway. In a late race duel with Bubba Wallace, to lock himself into the round of 8 as well. So, the another wild card race this weekend at the Charlotte Roval, which potentially has some implications in the future, whether we'll continue to be running on the Roval, or will this race move back to the Oval, which will be maybe a second part of our conversation here. But definitely some drivers obviously in great shape in the points, and others are teetering on the bubble, and at least one for sure is in a must-win situation.
Yeah, I think. Everybody can. I went to Talladega when I was a young lad myself back in, I think, 95 or 96. I went to Talladega, and it was the track itself is arguably one of the best in as a fan experiences you'll ever experience in the entire motorsports world when it comes to just fandom of all everyone. It's a melting pot of all fandom and having a good time, and everyone's really really great fans, great atmosphere. And I think we'll talk about the Charlotte Roval a little bit, but I'm a traditionalist, and we can argue about that later when it comes to the schedule, which we will talk about. I'm definitely a traditionalist, and it's good to see. We're down to the round of 8 cutoff, and now we'll go into this with Talladega. Obviously, Kevin Harvick had that penalty, which I think we can briefly discuss for a second. Obviously, he's not in the playoff picture, but that penalty infraction is a very difficult one to understand, because even Rodney Childers, excuse me, I probably pronounced all the names correctly. Obviously for Stewart Haas Racing, kind of went into detail post race about they were falling off. The fasteners that were holding the windshield wiper, I believe it was, or holding the windshield.
The actual windshield, yeah.
Yeah, holding the windshield was actually, some of them have actually loosened up throughout the race. So they were on up until about lap, I think he said 150 or so, and then it was starting to come undone. So the transparency from him, it wasn't like an intentional thing for some kind of performance enhancement.
Well,
I don't think it was a performance enhancement thing. I think it was.
I might rebut it. I might.
All right, go ahead, bud.
I might
Go ahead.
call BS on it.
Go. I want to hear this logic on how loosening up
the
bolts off a windshield is a performance enhancer. Go ahead.
So if you teams, the areas where teams can get creative is very, very small at these points. Again, I'm not saying that they did it, but to say, okay, well, I mean, obviously it came loose. There are certain facets of the car where you're looking for any bit of area that you can do things like bleed air out and or have parts of the car move and be movable. Years ago, that same four team got busted for the back glass on their car caving in. So these are areas that I think they look at, where they could say, okay, how can we find our way to get an advantage? Which, listen, that's the job of a crew chief, is how do I take how do I, within the box I'm in, how do I find opportunities to to gain an advantage. And so you cannot. I'm not saying that Rodney Childers is in the wrong for trying to gain an advantage, but to say, okay, well, it was an issue, and it just worked its way loose. I don't know. I could take it or leave it. Now, again, but then I will say, obviously, when you're racing at close to 200 miles per hour, and things like the windshield and the hood and areas like that are under a tremendous amount of stress. I mean, you look at, if you watch these cars in and out of the draft, the cowl flaps and different pieces on the car, as the car is in and out of the draft, those parts are moving and flapping up and down. Like, yeah, I could see that, but I could argue both sides, but I think you have to look at maybe the totality of the statute of limitations on areas of that four team has had issues in the past with their cars failing tech or having parts that were deemed illegal. So or touch. So I'm kind of, I'm on the fence. I'll put it like that. I'm on the fence of believing everything he's saying.
Well, okay, so I mean, it's half truths, right? So let's go into that, because I'm not trying to say that there's a legitimate reason why. I'm saying that there's a possibility there that things get loose at Talladega, because it's literally bump drafting the shit out of each other for 200 laps, and so things can happen. I'm not saying all things happen, but it did happen. So he got obviously his second place taken away, which I know he's not in the points contention for the round of 8 anymore, or it was not even in the round of 12, but still he would have seemed like a good result for his last couple races here going down the stretch. Blaney, obviously, that was a photo finish, and if you watch, anyone that's ever watched the playback and the audio, that is a master class of spotting, if I ever heard one.
Oh yeah.
Um, and it was, and he when he made the decision to go low, I think on the backstretch, yeah, I think on the last lap,
Yep.
and
Yep.
I said that's what Blaney's been missing for a little while now. I said he knows how to follow his line, and of course, that's all communication from Josh up at the top and telling him where these guys are, and just making the move and going with momentum, as Dale Earnhardt Jr. would say. You follow your run, but it was definitely a driver decision. Definitely raced hard to the line. Great win, honestly. I don't think there was a if you I did like his after the race quote of why he didn't burn it down. Uh,
Even though he technically did a burnout, but
yeah, well, I mean, yeah, there was a question about why he didn't do a burnout before in the past when he won,
yep.
and that's how that got straight out. Which I do like that quote. I think we should always use that from time to time.
Yep.
Um, which
I,
very valid point.
you bring up a great point there about the communication between spotter and driver. I think one of the, for folks who, if they get a chance, maybe look it up and listen to some of the audio there, because yeah, it is definitely a master class of listening to how a spotter and a driver work. One of the areas I think that was huge and crucial to him winning was on that last lap heading into three. Once Blaney had got inside of Harvick, and had the 24 of William Byron pushing him. They were going through the middle of 3 and 4, and Josh Williams, the spotter, came on the radio and said, "Don't let that 24 clear the 4." that was a crucial move because if he allowed himself to clear the 24 who had, I believe, the 9 and the 5, had 300 cars behind him, potentially could have put him um,
Or hung him out
kind
to
of
dry. Yeah,
hung
hung
him
him
out
out
to
to
dry
dry. Yeah.
coming to the checkered flag. So the idea of keeping the 24 behind him and
Yeah.
keeping him kind of boxed in was really a very, very heads up move, which I
I'm not.
think,
That's where I kind of listening back into watching that back again. Yeah, that definitely happens, and I of course I had to watch the entire race footage to see exactly where he says that. And you're right; they had 300 cars lined up. So if let's say Byron got a run to the quarter panel on the inside of, let's say he wanted to make a move on Blaney, he had two helpers behind him, and Blaney didn't have anyone there to help at the time. So
mhm,
it was definitely one of those situations where when Josh says those things, there's obviously a trust factor involved between a spotter and a driver. As a driver, you're allowing this person up top above you to basically put the safety in their hands. It's I think restrictive plate racing doesn't really get enough credence when it comes to the just unrelenting toll on the mind that it takes. Um,
yeah,
of just it's a constant barrage of stimulus to the brain of, do I go now? Do I wait? Do I go? Do I go? Do I have? And you're constantly. I know people don't. Some drivers like all that information, and that's fine. But in a plate race like this, you really do need that information
yep,
because you want to follow the best run possible, especially when you're in the lead or in the top five. You kind of know, especially when you're coming down to the wire. And that's where. So when you look at the Cup race points now, you you have Byron, obviously. I'm not saying obviously he's up, he's locked in. Blaney's locked in. Then you have Denny. He's a plus 50, so he's pretty much a shoe
yeah.
in at this point. Unless
He's got to finish.
something
He's got to
he's
finish
got to finish.
29th or higher.
Yeah.
Locks him in regardless of anything that happens on track. So basically a shoe in to win. And obviously, and real quick, give a kudos to Denny because he had his trademark speeding penalty last week, went a lap down, and then came back to finish. I believe finished fourth.
Hmm.
So I mean, the ability to overcome Denny really is one of the best at overcoming speeding penalties and finding a way to gain
Well, he
track.
just knows. I think it's a little bit of a just. He knows he messed up. He's not going to make his team pay for his mistake, and knowing that he's got to put that on his shoulders and kind of go. That's just a drive. That's a professional driver, in my view, taking ownership of a mistake and kind of going, okay, it's not the team's responsibility now to save me here. I got to
Yeah,
do something, right? I got to get back on the lead lap here. I got to work through these guys. I can't just be lollygagging in the back mid
uh,
race. I got to keep pushing to make sure I get the lucky dog position. These kind of things are definitely important when those things
yeah,
do happen.
yep,
So going through the rest of the points, guys, you got Christopher Bell, Chris Buescher, Martin Truex, Larson, and Keselowski. And the four guys currently out right now is Reddick, Wallace, Chastain, and Rowdy himself. So,
yeah,
must win is probably Rowdy at this point. I think
yeah.
we both can
Plus,
agree with that. He's
yeah.
got to win.
Plus, he's minus what 26, I believe, here
Yeah, minus
to Brad.
26. Yeah, so he's got to.
Yeah, yeah.
Everyone's got to quit or get DNF for him to make it at this point.
Yeah, he's definitely basically. I think he's the only one you got to look at that would say is an absolute
Must
must win.
win.
I think the other guys from basically, I think you'd probably say um, Larson's plus 15, Truex plus 17,
You
Busher
still want to
plus
finish well. I mean, you still want to
yeah,
put up because they're going into the next round here. So it's not like it's
yep,
a slouch type of situation where you
yep,
just kind of relax a little bit here. You got to, because we're coming down the stretch of races where not everyone's really good, and you kind of want to give yourself a little bit of a
yep,
cushion on some tracks that you're better at than maybe you're not so good at down the stretch. So
yep.
it's one of those things where
If you're Keselowski, looking at guys like Keselowski has really struggled on the road courses recently. So Keselowski, you got to look at their strategy is probably going to be, and also a reminder too this week is that there will be the cautions have returned at the end of stages. So
Yeah, I'm not a fan of those.
yes, but I think from a Keselowski standpoint, definitely they're going to be hardcore chasing stage points. They need them. I think basically
Is that an
everybody.
RFK? Is that you think it's an RFK deal collectively or just Brad?
Just Brad, I think. I think
Okay.
Brad's got to chase stage points. I think Kyle Busch. I mean, I think they throw stage points completely out. I think they're strictly on the strategy of just trying to win the race. Um, I think the guys, Reddick, Wallace, and Chastain, they probably are in that middle ground of either racing for stage points or
I mean,
racing to win.
let me ask you this, Chris: would it hurt those three guys other than Kyle Busch to chase after stage points?
No, yeah, I think Keselowski, Reddick, Wallace, Chastain are all going to race. All could potentially race for stage points. I think, but I think I think if you're Larson, Truex, Bush, you're kind of above there. I think you need to you probably need at least one stage worth of stage points and then maybe race for the win. But I think if you're Kyle Busch, it is all you just got to you're just racing it for track position and to be in the best possible position at the end of stage two and towards the final stage for a chance to win because your back's up against the wall at this point.
I think so. Going into this, who do you think wins actually at Charlotte? I mean, do we? I mean, minus our view. I mean, I have a difference of a view of the Roval. I believe the Daytona Road Course is better than the Roval, and it should have been used, you know, as a date compared to the Roval. Some people like the Roval. I'm a difference of opinion when it comes to it. I, I I'm not going to fall in love with it, but I understand the reasoning behind it because the mile and a half tracks were getting too many dates, and they wanted to break it up with some road courses. So you
Yeah.
know, yeah, that's
I think you got to look at the Toyotas. They've been really strong on the road courses this year. So, I think you got to look at Martin Truex Jr. I think Tyler Reddick, Christopher Bell, who won this race last year in a walk off because he was in a must win. So I would say that the Toyotas are probably the favorites to win this week. If I were to say maybe a dark horse, I'd look at a Chase Elliott or a William Byron. But I would for sure say I definitely would say the Toyotas are probably the odds-on favorites to win. I think maybe it's a long shot. I would probably say Denny Hamlin, but I would
yeah.
say
Denny's kind of showed some improvement on his road course racing over the years, but I'm not sure if he's.
yeah.
I mean, this particular track is his specialty, so I definitely. I don't know, man. I see
I,
a road course specialist kind of taking one here.
I
Um,
think I'll take. I think I'm going to roll with Tyler Reddick. I think
Yeah,
Reddick.
that's where I was leaning towards a little bit because he had a hell of a show last couple road courses, and it's. I mean, I also could see somebody else outside the playoff winning a race here because crazier things have happened at this track. I mean, we talk about people running out of fuel in the last lap, and people getting a win, and then getting into the next round. So it's one of those things where do I think Denny is going to be aggressive? I think he's going to probably be top 10, but I don't see him unless it falls in his lap. I don't see him winning that race. Um, I can see Busher pulling off an upset if I could. I'm not saying he's a crazy on road course guy, but the crazier things have happened at these tracks, and I think you can agree with that. And you're right with the Toyotas. I'm just not a Toyota fan, so it's kind of one of those things where as a fandom, you will like somebody else other than a Toyota to win a race. But is it going to happen? Who knows? Uh, Tyler Reddick is just a different road course driver now. Ever since, so that being said, though, I mean, going into the schedule, which was tentatively released with dates and somewhat different things that were updated. Chris, we can get into that topic here,
Yep. Yep.
and I think it's important for us to mention here next year has a lot of changes in the schedule when it comes to just not only tracks, but also dates of tracks, the schedule time frame, all of it's changed. There is a 2-week gap for the Olympics next year in August. Chris, did they bring back the Father's Day or Mother's Day weekend off situation?
Again, kind of hard to say at this point. I mean, some of the
Yeah.
things that we do know for sure. Yeah, obviously, season will start in Daytona.
Yeah,
That's
obviously, yeah. I
yeah,
was going to go there. Daytona.
yep,
For some reason, they brought back the Clash. I'm not a fan.
yep,
Just
yeah.
saying.
Clash will be at the Coliseum. Again, schedule's still not out. There have been some
There's
bits and
some tentative
pieces.
stuff. There's changing
Yep,
it. Probably it's not fully released yet, but for the most part, we have been told that obviously the start of the year is always going to be at Daytona. You have the Clash at the Coliseum, which I'm just baffled by the fact that they still brought this back, but this concept back again with the fact of logistics and everything else that goes with it to the West Coast. It's just you could have done the Clash at, I don't know, Wilkesboro or any other track for
oh,
that's on the East
you got
Coast.
you got to factor in. I mean, it's January, early February, so you got to go
Yeah,
somewhere
I know, man. I'm
warmish
not a fan
climate.
of driving out to the West Coast for literally an exhibition race and then driving
Yep,
those boys back 3,000 miles. So
yeah. But you
and
have
so you got Daytona. They obviously they announced as well, Chris. North Wilkesboro is getting the All Star race again next year, but they're a little bit of a, I would say, argument amongst race fans. They're repaving the track, which a lot of fans, old school, including myself, are kind of like, eh.
it.
Does not need to be done, but if you look
I
at the
mean,
condition of the track, it looks like it might need it.
track's coming apart. It's not. You got to factor that track had not been paved since the 1980s. You know, it wasn't
Mhm.
raced on competitively for over 20 plus years, and then they put race cars on it, and they had issues with the track coming up. It's you got to bite the bullet and get it done. There's things they can do, with the resin and various things like that to try and open up a second groove. So yeah, the notion that they could keep racing on that surface is insane.
Oh yeah, that's where
There were
I
more
knew they were going to make
patches.
a change. I wasn't sure if it was going to be this year or next year. I thought they were going to drop resin first before they did anything. Um, kind of patch it. Those patches or whatever you want to call them for the. But I
Yeah,
think doing a full repave with the grant that they received, I believe for I forgot what bill it was, but they received some funds to do some renovations, and that's part of it. Big takeaway from the schedule release or tentative release is both dates in Bristol are going to go back to the concrete,
hmm
which I'm a big fan of as a short track fan and a Bristol fan. I'm always a big fan of that because I think it's necessary. Um,
yeah.
but it,
I would say, the hope is that, that spring race had been lagging. I mean, there was a point towards the end before they did put the dirt down that, they weren't even selling the corners. The attendance had been going way downhill for that spring race. So hopefully with the, getting back onto the concrete for two races, that'll get the intrigue back up. But we understand why they did it, but now we also kind of understand why they're going back to the basics there as well.
well, I mean that too, and then another big takeaway from the tentative schedule release is definitely the announcement that they're going back to the oval in Indianapolis, and for the Brickyard 400, which I'm actually kind of excited about because this would be the first, I believe, Brickyard 400 that's under the Roger Penske ownership group
Yep.
of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Yep. That is
Um,
right. Yep.
and I
Yep.
know that the intention of going to the road course was, like I said earlier, previously with the Roval concept, was to add road courses to a schedule that it was dominated by oval in mile and a half. But Indianapolis as a whole is one of the, in my opinion, is one of the greatest tracks there is in the country of the United States. So it's regardless of what people think about, you know, the 2 mile long track that it is, it's it's the venue. And I think with Roger doing a lot of renovations to the track, the amenities of the track, not just the surface, but it's definitely going to be really a fun atmosphere for the fans. I think the fans were enjoying the road course. I just think it wasn't selling tickets anymore after like the first year. I think it
Oh,
so.
I, and I think everyone went. I think that the whole adage of all the road courses going crazy. I think that kind of wore off now. So
And
time will tell.
I am disappointed, and I will say I am disappointed. Um, the fact that Road America is not on the schedule again. I am disappointed that they decided to bring back the Chicago road course, which I wasn't against the Charlotte or the Chicago road course as a venue. The track layout looked a little weird, but I just I understand. I just think Road America, in my view, is a lot better racers road course than a layout that was created by a bunch of engineers
Yeah.
using city streets. So a little disappointed in that, but I mean, I understand why they had to do it. But other than that, man, I'm just trying to think of anything else we haven't discussed
Uh,
for the schedule here.
Texas looks like it's going to move from the fall back into April. So
Well, they had two. They always had two dates up until the last couple of years here, and then the
no,
last,
yeah,
yeah, and then
they,
they're in this year with Wilkesboro getting a date for the All Star race that took, I guess, one of the dates away,
mhm. Yep,
or, and
yep,
then and so yeah, the fall race. I'm glad they're doing a race in Texas, not in the middle of the summer. So I'll accept it if that makes sense to you because I live
mhm,
here. Um, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I get it because Texas
yep,
Motor Speedway. I mean, either bulldoze it or do something with it,
yep.
because it's not selling out and it's doing nothing but taking up space. So
Then
they need.
also, I think one of the last bits of news so far that was announced actually today, as we're taping, was that the Cup Series will finally, after 15 plus years, will finally race at Iowa Speedway in
I mean, that's a great track.
2024.
That is a phenomenal track. It really is. It's a
Yeah.
challenging. It's a challenging track, short track in the sense of its design, as they would say. It looks more like a Phoenix kind of style, or even a Richmond. So
Yep.
that's a really. I think that kind of helps the drivers as well prepare for champ. I'm not sure exactly where they're going to put it on the schedule. They haven't really released it yet, but I'm assuming
June.
be in June. So
Yep.
yeah, it's a good preparation for potentially for Phoenix in the fall if they want to use it for that, or even for Richmond. So I think it's a pretty good thing.
Yep. And I believe the last rumor that I heard, and one of the reasons why that Iowa is being put on the schedule is because there was talk that the series was going to go to Montreal, but unfortunately, seems like contractual obligations have led to that not happening. But there's also rumor that Richmond could be a doubleheader weekend for the Cup Series. So we'll again, time will tell if some of these rumors will finally get closed out. But it should be a pretty darn good schedule for 2024 in the Cup Series.
Absolutely, Chris. I mean, like I said, man, I appreciate you joining me for this episode. Hopefully, we all have a good rest of your week. It's gonna be a fun weekend as well at the Roval. I gotta do some iRacing here tomorrow, probably myself. Do some racing. I'm terrible at road course, so it's if I do any of that kind of stuff, it only gets better. But hopefully, everyone has a good rest of your weekend. Have fun, enjoy yourselves, watch some baseball because we officially started the playoffs today, and hopefully, we get to enjoy America's pastime as well as NASCAR this weekend, as well as college football and NFL football. So, Chris, thank you for joining me as always. Another time, another episode. Let's do it all again next time. I appreciate it.